Dozens of women. One man, no real name, no real past. Just heartbreak, empty bank accounts, and a trail of lies. But one woman didn't give up, and what she uncovered was terrifying. Have you ever trusted someone online who wasn't who they said they were? It always began the same way. A charming message on a dating app, a few witty lines, a good morning text that made her smile. Then a date that felt like something out of a movie. He remembered the little things. He listened. He made her feel seen, really seen. But days later, he vanished. No goodbye, no explanation, just silence. At first, each woman thought she was alone, embarrassed, hurt, confused. But it wasn't random, because by the time the third woman stepped forward, the pattern was impossible to ignore. This wasn't just ghosting. This wasn't just a con. It was a calculated campaign, a system, a target list. And at the center of it all, someone hiding in plain sight. They were from different cities, different backgrounds, but they all met the same man, Amy Rodriguez, 32, from New York. A graphic designer with a soft heart and a habit of giving people the benefit of the doubt. She lost. 18-0. Sasha Lin, 28, from Seattle. A tech consultant, independent, smart. But one wrong click, and her identity was gone. Claire Jennings, 41, from Atlanta. A single mother. She didn't lose money, but what he took from her couldn't be measured in dollars. They met him online. He went by different name. Eli, Jake, Marcus. Always new photos. Always believable stories. But the charm? That was always the same. A carefully constructed character. Kind eyes. Just the right amount of confidence. An ambitious career story, something about working overseas, starting a business, or dealing with family emergencies. And vulnerability, enough to disarm. Enough to make a woman feel needed. It started with good morning texts, thoughtful compliments, late-night talks that felt like something real, love bombing. He made them feel chosen, special, until the shift came. A phone call. Panicked. I hate asking, but I don't know who else to call. His mother was in the hospital. His business partner disappeared with his money. His account was frozen overseas. Always something urgent. Always temporary. Amy wired the money first. Sasha opened a joint account. Claire offered emotional support, even while doubting herself. Then, silence. No calls, no texts. His dating profile? Deleted. His number? Disconnected. They weren't just ghosted. They were emptied emotionally, financially, and mentally. And like so many others, they blamed themselves. Some never told a soul. Some filed police reports that went nowhere. Some waited months, still hoping for an answer. But one of them refused to let it end there. What would you do if someone you trusted vanished with your money? Would you report it? Or would you bury the shame and pretend it never happened? Sasha couldn't let it go. After months of silence, humiliation, and locked accounts, she did what no one else had dared. She hired a private investigator. It cost her almost everything she had left. But she needed answers, something, anything, to prove she wasn't crazy. That she hadn't imagined it all. The investigator started where the police refused to look, cross-referencing dating apps, digging through social media, tracing old email addresses. What he found was chilling. 3 other women unknown to each other, living in different states, had uploaded reports online about a man with the same face, same smile, same stories, different names. But it was the photos that tied it all together. Identical headshots, slightly altered filters, a few clicks through a facial recognition software, and the mask cracked. The real man behind the scam, Daniel Reyes, 38 years old. A history of wire fraud, financial theft, and identities scams across 5 states. But there was just one problem. Daniel Reyes was supposed to be dead. 3 years earlier, a man matching Daniel's description was found floating in the Mississippi River. No identification. No family came forward. Eventually, the body was declared his. Case closed, or so they thought. Daniel Reyes was buried. And yet, someone using his name and face was active online messaging women draining their lives. Was it identity theft of a dead man? A twin? Or had Daniel faked his own death to start again? And if so, how many more women were out there, still waiting for a text back? Sasha's question turned into something more dangerous. She didn't just want her money, she wanted to know who she had let into her life, and why the system let him disappear so easily. Sasha wasn't alone. Her search led her into the depths of online forums where grief doesn't cry at types. Hidden among posts about healing and heartbreak, she found it. A small, private survivor group titled After Eli. At first, the name meant nothing. But then she read the stories, and her breath caught in her throat. There was Amy from New York, who lost 18-0. Sasha from Seattle, whose identity had been stolen. Claire from Atlanta, who couldn't bear to date again. And now, 22 more women. Different cities, different names, same man, same patterns. He always appeared when they were most vulnerable. After a breakup, a move, a job loss, he'd love bomb them with compliments, late-night calls, handwritten poems sent digitally. Then came the sob story. A mother in the hospital, a locked bank account, an emergency flight. Just enough truth to sound human. Just enough need to seem real. Each woman handed over pieces of herself, money, passwords, trust, until he ghosted, vanished, as if he'd never existed at all. But here's where the pattern cracked. In a flurry of messages and screenshots, Sasha noticed something, a shared password recovery email. Each woman had, at some point, clicked a link he sent. Help me retrieve this account. It's just a verification, babe. Just click once. I need you. They did. And without knowing, they handed him access to emails, phones, even cloud storage. He didn't just leave. He watched them. He listened, reading every goodbye message they sent him, tracking every attempt to rebuild their lives. He stayed in their lives long after he was gone, silently watching, collecting, learning. This wasn't a love scam. This was a system. One man, multiple identities, decades of digital manipulation and psychological control. But the question still burned. Why? Was he chasing money? Validation? Or something even harder to understand? Could someone fake love so convincingly because they've never truly felt it? Or was it never about love at all? Was it always about control? Until now, it had all been shadows, whispers, stories. But a ghost, even a ghost, leaves footprints. Sasha was done being a victim. Alongside her private investigator, she brought in someone who could amplify the story beyond the walls of online forums, an investigative journalist named Aaron Cross. Known for chasing cold trails and exposing the cracks in the system, Aaron had one rule. No story is too messy if it helps someone else sleep again. The three of them formed an unlikely trio: a survivor, a seeker, and a storyteller. Together, they pulled every thread. Aaron dug into financial records. The PI tracked inconsistencies in travel routes. And Sasha, armed with nothing but instinct and pain, found the pattern others missed. Then, finally, a break. A grainy bank security footage from a small branch in Ohio, timestamped just hours after Amy Rodriguez reported her account drained. The footage showed a man wearing a baseball cap pulled low, sunglasses indoors, fake ID in hand. He withdraws. 4-0 in cash. The bank didn't flag it. The police didn't pursue it. But the footage was enough for the journalist to publish her first piece, The Man Who Loved Too Many. Within 48 hours, it went viral. More women came forward. A Reddit thread exploded with screenshots, locations, near-identical stories. What was once shame and silence became a loud reckoning. Then the FBI got involved. Because now, it wasn't just heartbreak, it was federal crime. Through facial recognition and forensic analysis, the FBI uncovered something far more disturbing. The man they were looking for, Daniel Reyes, was using more than fake names. He was using dead men's identities. Names pulled from obscure obituaries. Social security numbers recycled from unclaimed death certificates. Credit scores hijacked. Birth dates tweaked just enough to pass. He created shell personas like a magician pulling rabbits from thin air. He had no permanent address. He booked no hotels under his real or fake names. He traveled by bus, often overnight. He stayed in hostels using names borrowed from his victims' own contacts. In the eyes of the law, he barely existed. But in the lives of his victims, he had left scorched earth. He wasn't running. He was floating. Through systems. Through people. Through the blind spots no one thought to check. But his web was starting to unravel. How do you catch someone who doesn't exist on paper? What would you do if justice meant becoming the investigator yourself? For months, he'd been ahead. Always one step, one name, one story away from being caught. He was clever, but he wasn't invincible. Because even the best liars crave the one thing they can't steal: connection. The FBI, now fully involved, constructed a trap not with bullets or battering rams, but with something far more dangerous to a man like Daniel: trust. A honeypot. A perfect profile. She was Maya, late 30s. Warm, professional, emotionally available. Her profile was carefully engineered by behavioral analysts. Her interests mirrored those of Daniel's past victims: books, photography, stories of loss and hope. Her photos were real, but the identity was not. The messages began within hours of Maya going live. The same rhythm, the same questions, the same charm. Where are you from? What brings you online? I feel like I've known you forever. And then came the first red flag. The one investigators had seen a dozen times before. His reluctance to meet in public. His preference for cash apps. The emotionally charged sob story. This time about an investment gone wrong and a sister with leukemia. A story crafted not to ask for money, but to earn sympathy. Because sympathy is the currency of a con man. The FBI agreed to a meeting. The location: a quiet cafe in Phoenix, Arizona. Time: 8:15 p.m. Surveillance teams were planted in surrounding cars. Agents posed as baristas, pedestrians, even customers. They were ready. And this time, the ghost would step into the light. He showed up, wearing dark jeans, a blue jacket, and a soft smile that had once fooled dozens. But this time, there were no roses, no coffee, no escape. As he reached for Maya's hand, agents moved in. One word shattered the illusion: FBI. Chaos erupted. Tables overturned. Chairs scraped against tile. Civilians screamed. But Daniel, calm as ever, did not run. He raised his hands. No fight, no words. Just a soft, amused smile. His ID read, Noah Carter. Another lie. Another layer. No gun, no resistance, no fear. It was almost as if he'd expected it. But the arrest wasn't the end. It was just another chapter in a story filled with fractured identities, ruined lives, and unanswered questions. Because the more they investigated, the more they wondered, did he have help? His movements were too clean. His tracks too well covered. The timing of each identity switch suspiciously calculated. Someone this precise doesn't usually act alone. Was Daniel Reyes or Noah Carter working with someone? Could a scam this big run without inside help? Let us know in the comments. And ask yourself, if someone stole your heart and your identity, would you even know it? After the arrest, there was no celebration, no cheers, no victory laps. Because for the women he hurt, the damage was already done. Scars were invisible, but they ran deep. Amy Rodriguez, once a rising marketing exec in Manhattan, hadn't told anyone at first. The $18,000 she wired was meant to save his mother, at least. That's what he said. But when he disappeared, so did something inside her. Amy. It wasn't just the money. It was the shame. He made me feel seen, like I was the only person in the room. And then he erased me, like I never existed. She lost her job soon after performance issues, stress, panic attacks. She couldn't focus. Her coworkers whispered. Her friends offered sympathy, but she could feel the judgment behind their eyes. How could you fall for that? Sasha Lin, who first blew the whistle, had a different kind of battle. He hadn't just stolen her money, he'd stolen her name. She discovered credit cards she'd never opened, a rental agreement in Florida she'd never signed, her tax records flagged for fraud. The nightmare didn't stop with a broken heart, it leaked into her very identity. Sasha, I had to prove who I was, over and over again, to banks, to employers, to my own government. But how do you prove your identity when someone else is already wearing it? Claire Jennings, a teacher and mother from Atlanta, never gave him money. But what he took was trust. Claire. He knew I had a kid. He would ask about my daughter, what she liked to read. He even gave me book recommendations for her. And then one day, nothing. I kept texting for days. I thought maybe something had happened to him. It took me 3 months to realize he was never real. Claire had to explain it to her teenage daughter why she cried behind closed doors, why the lights stayed off longer in the evenings, why her laughter seemed harder to find. They weren't weak. They weren't naive. They were human, and they were manipulated by someone who knew exactly what to say, when to say it, and how to make them believe. Some women never told their families. Others had their marriages fall apart. A few lost homes, jobs, reputations. But almost all shared something more painful than the loss of money: isolation. He didn't just take from them, he made them question themselves, their judgment, their worth. He turned love into a weapon and trust into a trap. After months of silence, stings, and heartbreak, he was finally in a courtroom. But Nathaniel Gray, if that really was his name, didn't walk in like a criminal. He strolled in like a man giving a lecture. He refused legal counsel, said he didn't trust the system, and in the ultimate twist he represented himself. He wore a navy suit, borrowed from the state. He smiled. He nodded at the judge like they were old friends. And when the charges were read, wire, fraud, identity theft, emotional abuse claims from over 30 women across 10 states, he stood quietly, then spoke with eerie calm. Your Honor, I never forced anyone. They gave me their money, their names, their trust, freely. I simply played the part they needed. And for a moment, the room froze. Nationwide, his face flooded the screens. Podcasts dissected his tactics. Morning shows interviewed victims. Criminologists weighed in. Even former romantic con artists spoke anonymously about the tactics Nathaniel used. And then came the truth that made it all worse. He had studied this. Nathaniel Gray was a dropout, but not from failure, from success. He left school not because he couldn't understand the human mind, but because he'd already learned how to control it. His former professor testified. A quiet man with trembling hands said Nathaniel was brilliant and disturbing. Professor, he asked too many questions about empathy. Not how to feel it, but how to fake it. In court, victim after victim took the stand. They cried, They shook. They apologized for things that weren't their fault. He didn't blink. Amy Rodriguez's testimony: I was a person. He treated me like a transaction. Sasha Lynn's testimony: this wasn't love. It was fraud. And he weaponized our hearts. The prosecution painted a picture of a man who operated like a cult leader. Only his temple was the inbox. His sermons? Text messages and promises. But the defense? It was chillingly simple. Nathaniel. They wanted connection. I offered it. They wanted to believe. I let them. The jury took 11 hours. There were debates, anger, and hesitation. Because what Nathaniel did wasn't just legal fraud, it was emotional destruction. And when the verdict was read, the room held its breath. Justice, in the eyes of many, had finally been served. Nathaniel Gray, if that was even his real name, was sentenced to 24 years for fraud, identity theft, and financial crimes. But behind the victory, something didn't sit right. Not with the victims, not with the investigators, and not with the woman who came forward during week 3 of the trial. For many of the women, the story didn't end in the courtroom. They had to learn to trust again. Not just other people, but themselves. Amy left New York, moved in with her sister in Vermont. She doesn't date anymore. She fosters rescue dogs. Sasha changed careers, from tech to advocacy. She now runs online support groups for victims of emotional scams, HeartSafe Foundation supporting survivors of emotional fraud. Claire? Claire filed for bankruptcy. She still sees his profile in her dreams. Claire, I lost more than money. I lost who I was when I believed someone like him could love me. And then, just when they thought it was over, it wasn't. Julia Merritt, 39, teacher, Nevada. Met a man who called himself Eli. Same smile, same phrases, same game. She shows pictures, text messages, bank transactions. But here's the catch, Julia. I saw the news. That face in the courtroom, that wasn't him. Authorities dismiss it at first. But then, a second woman, in Florida, says the same thing. And finally, one red flag no one could ignore. During intake at the state penitentiary, the man booked as Nathaniel Gray gave up a DNA sample, routine procedure. But when cross-checked with the file of Daniel Reyes, the man declared dead in Ohio 3 years earlier, there was no match. So, who did they actually arrest? Who was the man behind the names, the lies, the heartbreak? He had no fingerprints on record. The name Nathaniel Gray didn't exist in any birth registry. The social security number traced back to a deceased child from 1984. He was a ghost, a shapeshifter. And while one man sits in prison, some now believe the real predator is still out there. And somewhere, on a screen, a new message is being typed. It starts like all the others. You seem amazing. I'd love to get to know you. Do you believe the man in prison was the real predator, or just another mask? Would you know if it was happening to you? He used different names, told the same stories, loved like he meant it, then disappeared. But in the end, was it all just one man? Or the blueprint of something far more organized, more dangerous than anyone imagined? In the final moments of the investigation, DNA tests confirmed what many feared. The man arrested as Nathaniel Gray wasn't Nathaniel at all. His real identity? Landon Pierce, a former cybersecurity analyst who faked his own death years earlier to vanish into the shadows. Landon had created an elaborate web of stolen identities, online aliases, and emotionally calculated scripts designed to manipulate, exploit, and disappear. He was the architect of it all. Thanks to Sasha's relentless pursuit and the coordinated sting, Landon Pierce was finally unmasked and sentenced to 35 years in federal prison for fraud, identity theft, and wire fraud. But even behind bars, some victims say, they still receive messages from new profiles with familiar words and the same smile. The ghost lives on. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell, because this isn't the only story where charm hides cruelty. We've only just begun to uncover how far deception can go, and how far one person will go to find the truth. Love can blind, but trust, once stolen, is nearly impossible to recover.